my name is Ryan, this is my brother Daniel, and this is Rolls in the Family. Today we are going to be counting down our top 3 plays of June 2023. We will include links to all the games we talk about in the description below. We would also love to hear what were your favorite games you've played in the last month, if you want to drop that in the comments.
Yep.
We love hearing about games, whether the ones we've played or haven't played.
Maybe ones to check out.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, and there's a lot of different reasons that games might make this list. It may be that it just was a really good play of a particular game. Sometimes it's a game that we haven't gotten to the table in a long time. Sometimes, in the case of Daniel, it's because you only played 3 games. And so, they have to make
Close.
Yeah, Daniel had a light month, I think, of... He moved.
Yeah,
he
there was a lot of
happening.
transitions. I've moved. We got to the last week of the month. Now I took a trip and visited a family. So Ryan and I were together, as you'll see in my my top plays. But there was a point there where I wasn't sure if I was gonna be able to.
Yeah, I joked.
Make
I was
this
like,
video.
I should just make you just only pull out like the kids' games when you're here to just force them onto your list. But
yeah. Do I get fired
I'm
if I don't get 3 plays in? Do I get fired? Is that
it's in the contract.
It's in the contract.
The fine print.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump to you first, and I'm interested to see where things landed for you.
Yeah, I mean, this will be an interesting video because there's got to be some overlap. I mean, my only choices were games played together practically, but
I played quite a few games.
But you
month.
played quite a few.
Yeah.
Okay, so and you clearly didn't have fun with the ones with me.
Yes, there's one thing we've established on this.
We've established that clearly on this channel. So my number 3 play is going to go to Keyforge. We played a game of Keyforge together when I was out there, and we both own Keyforge decks. But we were just playing your sets, and you have to remind me what those, because we were playing with 2 new decks. I don't even think you had played those decks before,
because
right?
I had backed the new Winds of Exchange set that's now with Ghost Galaxy owns Keyforge, which is led by Christian Peterson, who originally brought Keyforge to Fantasy Flight. And one of the kind of add-on things they did, I don't know if it was a stretch goal onto the Kickstarter campaign or GameFound or whatever it was these like Unchained decks. Decks where basically they let the algorithm like break a bunch of rules it normally wouldn't be allowed to break. So you get lots of like cards that are like outside of houses they would normally be in, and just like a lot of weird stuff. And they're not like tournament legal, but we're not tournament Keyforge players, so we don't really care. So I'm just like, they're cool decks. But there are these kind of Unchained decks that are expected to be a little bit more crazy.
Yeah, and for those of you who aren't familiar with Keyforge, it's a card game kind of similar to like Magic the Gathering, but what's really unique about it is that you buy individual decks, but every deck in the world is unique. There's no 2 decks that are the same, and
there's no deck building. Like the cards have programmatically designed backs that have to stay in a deck together. So that what you get is what you play with.
Which we love. We love that aspect. If you don't have to go out and be, who can buy the best cards, it's really how can you play this deck the best, which I think is a lot of fun for us who kind of just casually play it. But we had a fun game, so I'm playing with this unique deck. I wrote down the name here, Luria, the Miscreant of Plague. I mean, it even randomizes the name of these decks. And it's cool to go into a game where you've never played the deck before. You're kind of like discovering it as you play. Yeah,
we were both completely blind, and it was blind kind of to the new set, because the new set has a lot of new cards that we've never seen before.
I know the one thing that I thought was really cool from that new set was the whole token creatures, where on the back of every card, and I want to say it's unique to each house. Like each house has
I think
its
there's
own
like a couple
versions
creature in each house, but so your deck has like the one, what all your token creatures are going to be this particular one.
Right. So you might have some cards that's, allow you to bring out token creatures, where you just take the top card of your deck, and instead of flipping it over, you just put it out, and you have a side reference card that tells you what your token creatures do. And I just thought that was a really cool added thing into the game. That was a lot of fun. And we had a pretty close game. You were kind of just ahead of me the whole way. You got me in a really tough situation where it was like I was trying to remember. I couldn't steal your amber.
Yeah, so I first put out the artifact that if ever you stole from me, I like recorded it in my book, and then I could use that to just purge creatures, which didn't end up ever happening, but it
never
was like a
actually
deterrent.
happened.
But then I ended up getting out another, I think it was a creature or something, that just straight prevented you from stealing as long as it was out.
So it was like
that's
it was a
hard.
lose-lose.
Yeah.
I was like,
when
okay,
I'm
well,
ahead and you can't steal,
I
it's
can't
hard
steal,
to come
and then
back.
even if I do steal, you're purging. Yeah, that was a very, very tough situation. But I had a lot of fun in this play. You know, I hadn't played Keyforge in a while. We both have great memories of doing Keyforge tournaments with our friends and whatnot. But yeah, Keyforge is a game that I definitely want to, being in a new place now, find a group of people that, because what's awesome is people can get into it so easily. You know,
Yeah.
it's just, you can pick up a deck for like $8 or something. You can get the starter set for like $10 sometimes.
Some of the old stuff is so ridiculously
so cheap, such a good value. So my number 3 play goes to Keyforge.
Very nice. Yeah, I'm excited to see it back, like that, because it looked like it was going to die with Fantasy Flight, and it's not only back, but it's back with like the team that really is passionate about it. And we're not like interested in real tournament play at all. Like they have like competitive stuff. We just think it's so fun to play casually, and I think too many people overlook it because it's the type of game that's, you know, you buy lots of different decks and there is tournament play. You don't have to play it like that. Like you can just get like 10 decks and you've got this great, you know, game that you can
great
mix
variety.
And match. So,
yeah.
Good pick. Didn't make my list, but not because I didn't enjoy the game. I had a pretty strong month. I had a much stronger month of gaming than you, I think.
Wow. How rude.
Yes. I'll go with my number 3 is going to be one that I think I've talked about before on one of these lists, and that is Dune Imperium. And this is just it's one of those games that every time I play, it's just like, this is just a good game.
I didn't know you got this one to the table.
Yeah, so it was maybe earlier, kind of in the middle of the month. I was playing with one new player, and then our sister was the third in the game, who had played it once before, I think. But this time we did play with the expansion, the Rise of Ix expansion, which that was one of my big takeaways from the game. Is just like, man, that expansion, I just love what it adds. Like adding those technologies, being able to play with all the extra cards in the deck.
I think it's mentioned in our best expansions video.
True. Yes, we did our top 10. Each of our top 10 expansions of all time definitely appears there. I'm pumped for the Immortality expansion that I don't have yet, but I've only heard amazing things about. So that's definitely high on my list to pick up. I think what was particularly kind of memorable about this specific game is it's a deck building game, and there's times in Dune Imperium that you may get some things that allow you to cull cards from your deck. But this is definitely the most I've ever like gone all in on a strategy where like I got a tech that let me, it was like disposal facility that every time, I'm forgetting what the trigger was now. I think it's every time I had a certain amount of influence, like in the buying phase, I would get to trash something from my deck. So and I had a few cards that let me trash. So I was able to get my deck like really trimmed down, which with some of the combos in that game where it's like, oh, like, you know, if you have a Bene Gesserit card in play with this other one, it's extra good. I was able to like really increase the probabilities of those happening and cycle through my deck quicker, which means when I'm buying new cards, I don't have to wait as long for that to cycle back into my deck. So it was fun to get to kind of go more with that type of strategy, which I've played the game, 14, 15 times. And, you know, this is the first time I've really felt like I could lean into that hard. And I think a big part is the Rise of Ix expansion. Because like the technologies and just how they can allow you to really kind of push in a different way. I just think it's great. And so it was a good game. You know, I ended up winning. Again, I feel bad because like a lot of my recent games of Dune Imperium have been with people that like haven't played it nearly as much as me. Yeah. But I felt like it was a good, you know, close game. It didn't look like I was necessarily going to win. It was a little sneaky as far as, you know, getting it on a lot of the different influence tracks and stuff. But just a really solid game. One that, like I said, I'm itching to get the Immortality expansion because a lot of people are saying they like it even more than Rise of Ix. And so I'm just really excited about playing that game more. I'm glad I was able to get it to the table again.
Yeah, that's one that we're going to be doing our top, ranking our top games coming up, and I'm very curious where that's going to land for you, because I feel like you've gotten it played. It's not often that these bigger games you get to play them multiple times in a year.
It's nice that it's not a super long, like it tends to be closer to the 90 minutes to 2 hours,
That's true.
as opposed to going past, which helps. But it definitely, I think in the last 2 years is like my most played kind of bigger game.
Yeah.
And it's one I really like introducing new players to. Like, it just has a lot of cool stuff going on, and like I feel like a lot of the people that are looking to play kind of a bigger game will like it.
Yeah. And then if they're interested in the theme, I haven't read any
I mean,
I knew nothing about Dune.
I've read the book. This actually is one example of the new player that was playing. He actually really likes the books and is familiar with a lot of as has read, I think most of the books in the main series. So yeah, he totally was loving seeing the different.
Right. I would assume that would improve it even more. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So great game. Yeah,
awesome.
we'll see where it lands on my top games this year.
Yeah, that's gonna be exciting. So my number 2, another game that we played together.
Really?
Yeah,
I'm so glad.
Is a game that I do not own myself, but man, after this play, it it has shot up to a game that I'm realizing is so great, kind of almost in kind of how I view like Wingspan, maybe even Quacks, of like that one of those games that you can just bring out with it's so accessible and can work with a wide range of people, and that is Cascadia. So Cascadia is a very popular game. It has really shot up in popularity. I don't know where it's at on the BGG.
I mean, it won the Spiel des Jahres, the biggest gaming award, so that certainly helps.
Right. And I think what I appreciate is the rules to the game are very simple. It's I don't know if there's a specific name for this mechanic where you've got the tiles, 2 things that are
it's like
rows.
Paired drafting.
We'll officially call it that. Yeah. And it's such a simple thing, and yet I just love it. It's so fun to have like these 2 different variables, and you're kind of weighing each option. Okay, which one, figuring out which one's better for you. And so in the game, you're the options that you're weighing is drafting on the top row these tiles that you're placing out in front of you, and then on the bottom row are these various animals, and the animals have each game unique ways that they score. And so every turn you're placing a tile out, and then you're placing an animal somewhere out on one of your tiles to fill the ecosystem. And you're trying to do it all to maximize scoring. And I'm starting to realize more and more I love games where you have multiple, especially variable scoring things, and you're in that tension of like how to perfectly maximize it. I actually had I end up winning this game, and it was because one of the animals I was able to maximize, I think, about as good as you can, and it was the red-tailed hawk, which scored 3 points for every direct line-of-sight connection that the hawk has to other hawks. So it's like they can't be adjacent, but anything further if they have a straight line of sight through the tiles. And so I built the perfect hex of a hawk in the middle and 6 around. Ryan, on the other hand, did not optimize his hawks. Ryan, care to explain yourself? I got a little
later in the game and realized I should have done this differently. But as we were talking about, it's a lot of trade-offs in this game. So I'm sure when I was putting it down, I was optimizing something else. And it was like, I can also put the hawk here. And it is like that paired drafting when you're taking the tiles. But then it's also like this paired puzzle of wherever you put something, I want to do it with what's best for connecting my landscapes or whatever different types. But I also want to be setting up my animals, because each tile says these are the animals you can put on them, and some only allow 2 or even 1 animal. So you want to make sure you're setting yourself up that you can get the animals that you want.
Yeah.
And I think it just comes together into a nice crunchy puzzle, but one where the rules are so simple. I actually saw an interesting thread where a guy was talking about he played it with like his 4-year-old or something, like, you know, way younger than you would expect.
Right.
And he was commenting on how, you know, he wasn't, it wasn't like a real game. His kid just like showed interest in it. So he's like, oh, sure, let's play around with it. But he was commenting on how his 4-year-old can play the game legally, like the rules, because you pick a pair, your tile can go anywhere. You don't have to put it next to the same terrain. Right. You just want to.
Yeah.
And then the animal, you just have to match, like as long as you match a tile that has it.
Yeah.
So he's like, I was able to have this really fun game with my 4-year-old. With him having fun, he wasn't competitive in the game.
Yeah.
But it does like speak a lot to kind of the rule set that like, another game that I think of that with is something like Sushi Go, where it's a drafting game, but there's never an illegal play that I'm aware of, at least. Like any card you pick is a legal card. So you can play with someone really young and like they're never going to flip, where something like Seven Wonders, for example, you might flip and be like, oh, actually, you're not able to build that card.
Yeah,
and I guess Seven Wonders, you can say like trash it for 3 coins, but it's
coin,
you know, not exactly.
You're trashing another one.
So I think it's a cool aspect of Cascadia, and as it's been in my collection, I've seen it's been nice how well it's worked with kind of just a little bit more casual groups, and when you have a mix of some people that want a little bit more from it. Very excited for the Landmarks expansion that's supposed to bump it to 6 players.
That really is great. And it's, again, just like, I have those few games in my collection that when I'm going to play games with, you know, maybe a couple or something that maybe they've played a few games but really aren't super familiar, you know, again, I find myself oftentimes going to like a Wingspan or a Quacks of Quedlinburg. You know, I've got these games that I'm realizing in my collection.
Both of those are more complicated.
And they are more complicated. So this one honestly would fill an even better niche of if you want something a little bit of a step down, probably plays a little quicker too. So yeah, I would not be surprised if Cascadia enters my collection in the near future. Kudos to Ryan. Ryan, what is your...
That's not an uncommon pattern for games entering your collection. Occasionally it happens the other way around.
Yeah, very rarely.
Yes, my second game is a game that you do not own. And it's one that, when I first got it, really played it a lot and was really going well with groups I was in. Haven't got to play it as much recently, but I've gotten I got the newest expansion for it not that long ago. Really love that expansion, and this is Res Arcana. Now, Res Arcana is kind of one of the newer games from Tom Lehman, who made one of our most played games of all time, which is Race for the Galaxy.
Review.
And it's kind of
above.
We have reviewed Race for the Galaxy.
We have.
We've played it over 300 times.
Over 300 times.
You know, we maybe like kind of have some opinions on it, but Res Arcana is definitely in the same kind of DNA of some of these other games he does, where it's a lot of emphasis on kind of card combos and card management. Res Arcana loops in a lot more, though, of this resource management. Like there's actual like tokens that you're collecting of the different essences. But it's such a fascinating game of your whole deck is only 8 cards, and you're only going to get 8. Those are your 8 cards for the whole game. And ideally, you've drafted those ahead of time, so you have this nice, you know, strategy of how you get those 8 cards.
Mm-hmm.
But it's this little puzzle of just with these 8 cards, how do I build an engine in this race to 10 points? Like, what's the most efficient? And any card can be discarded to gain essence. So it's a lot of times like, which are the ones that I want to actually play to get these abilities out? Which are the ones that I trash to power getting those other ones out? The new expansion, the Pearl, I'm not going to try to pronounce the real name, but it adds pearls, these really cool pearl pieces, which are a point, and you start the game with one of them that's a point. But you have the opportunity that you can trash a pearl to get essence as well. So you kind of have this decision of, is it worth to hold on to this point or do something? Because it is an engine building game. So almost always, in my experience, people use that initial pearl because it's better to, you know, get your engine going. But more than any game of Res Arcana I've ever played, this is a game where the pieces fell into place to where I had about 3 or 4 cards out. And I'd gotten a place of power that was specifically like the pearl place of power that had a way that I could get pearls that I have onto it by paying gold or something. And now those pearls essentially count for 3 points instead of 1 point. And it was one of those moments where we're like not even halfway through the game, and I look at my setup and I go, I just have to churn this engine. Just I like have this perfect engine to every turn just spit out points, and just realizing I'm like, there's almost no way that we as a 2-player game, there's almost no way my opponent's going to be able to beat me. Because it just was like, this is like an optimal. Now it ended up, I actually was glad because I was afraid I was just going to rush the game and blow him out of the water. It actually had a very interesting ending because he had the what is it called? The Philosopher's Stone or something. I might be mixing it up with Harry Potter, but it's called something.
I feel like I remember something like that in this game.
I think it's the one that lets you do this big conversion of, you have to pay something, but then you can convert all of one resource into that much gold. And it's an expensive card to get out because that's a very powerful effect to be able to turn a bunch of something. And so he actually, and this is going into the last turn when he sees clearly I'm going to trigger the end of the game. He was able to convert something like 15 blues or greens or something into gold. And the thing about gold in Res Arcana is there's always, or at least until the deck runs out, monuments available that always cost 4 gold. And those range from 1 to 3 points and have various different abilities. And so suddenly we had this moment of depending on which monuments you can get here, he was going to be able to buy 4 of them, I think, between getting that and what he already had. And it didn't end up being quite enough, but it ended up being close. And it was, again, one of those cool things that, is possible in Res Arcana. Kind of these game breaking kind of, I kind of had the game breaking cycle, right? It was every turn I was producing this stuff that I could turn into this stuff and then put it on this. And that was just netting points. Whereas he kind of had this build up to this huge conversion that ended up. And so it's a lot of fun. I love the flexibility in that game with just, like I said, the being able to discard cards for essence, but then you also have your character ability that you can, use every turn. And then every turn you get to draft one of those bonus or action tiles or whatever they're called. Magic items. I think that's the thematic tie-in. But that's really nice when you're okay, going into this next turn, this is the one thing I'm kind of missing. Oftentimes you can kind of fill that gap with one of those magic items. So it was a very fun game. It was definitely the most powerful combo I got, but it was also fun to see how it almost was countered by another very cool combo.
Right.
So really good to get to the table. It had been a little while, and I'm really enjoying that new expansion.
Yeah, I've enjoyed that one when I've tried. I've only played it a few times, so I still feel like I'm kind of in the forming my full opinion on it, but I've definitely enjoyed it. It's kind of it almost kind of caught me off guard at first, just doing card, because you draft your cards at the beginning, but you only, what you said, 8 cards, right? That's it.
You draft 4 and then you draft 4 again.
And then the realization that that's everything that I'm going to be able to do is just in this right here.
Yeah.
So I'm especially when I'm coming from games where I'm used to card draft where you're just tons of cards. It's oh my gosh, these are critically important what I choose.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it definitely a great. Engine. It's a great engine builder, and the one that I will definitely need to try more.
Indeed.
So yeah.
Good transition.
That was Ryan's number. That was Ryan's number 2.
You want to do your number 1?
I think I'll do my number 1. So Ryan and I grew up playing Ghost Stories, and it was one of our favorite games. I was trying to think. How early on did we get Ghost Stories?
It was quite early. Not as early as maybe a Race for the Galaxy or some of those, but it was shortly after. It was probably after the original Pandemic was probably the next cooperative game we had.
Right. And it really stood the test of time. We had games come into our collection, leave our collection, but Ghost Stories it filled such a good niche. It delivered so many great experiences. We love cooperative games that are hard and difficult, and it's very hard. But we since then, Ryan's Ryan has the copy of Ghost Stories. You ended up getting the White Moon expansion, which is largely people really like that expansion and kind of thought that was going to, help deliver the ultimate Ghost Stories experience. And I'll pass it over to you, Ryan. You can take over the story so I don't speak for you, but you bought the White Moon expansion.
Yeah, and we had played Ghost Stories a lot by then. I mean, I'd logged probably 50 to 60 plays pre-White Moon.
Right.
And so, it was like, oh, this is really going to be the thing to inject some new life or experienced Ghost Stories players. And it was like, we liked it, but as I played it a few more times, I realized a few things. One, the games were getting much longer. So, instead of this being a 45 to 60 minute game, it was tending to be a 75 to 90 minute game. And I was like, I don't like
that's a whole different category.
That's not what I wanted it to be. So I didn't love that. But then I also didn't love what it did to the pacing of the game. It added this new, you could kind of place crystals around the board, and if you could get all 4 in, which in my experience, we could most games. That was like a doable thing to do.
Yeah.
It let you do this hugely powerful series of attacks or whatever that oftentimes we could clear out more than half the ghosts around the board. And what I found is that just like deflated the essence of the tension in Ghost Stories. Like so much of what we like about Ghost Stories is this feeling of it's just getting worse and worse, and like we're scraping by, and then at the end it's just like, how can I can do this to sacrifice to do this so you can get one shot on the final guy, and like it's just this escalation to that moment. And so I found I actually didn't like this kind of mid-game reset that kind of felt like we were totally in control. I guess I don't like in Ghost Stories feeling like I'm in total control. I like feeling like I'm having to figure out how to work in really tricky circumstances. And so I realized recently on a recent play of it that I was like, I don't know that I'm ever going to play with the White Moon expansion again. Like, I think I just prefer playing the base game. And once that clicked for me, I remembered they made a new version of Ghost Stories,
which is also my number 1 play.
Which is Daniel's
longest intro we've ever had.
Yes, we can get the graphic on the screen. What is it, Daniel?
Number 1 play, which is Last Bastion.
Yes, and I won't steal your thunder here, but just to finish my thought.
Yeah, finish your thought, Ryan.
I remembered that they made this new reprint, and why I hadn't considered it originally is because I knew it didn't have any of the expansion content. But now that I decided I'm not really interested in the expansion content, I looked into it again. One thing led to another, and I decided that Last Bastion was the game to continue on in my collection.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree. I've always had Ghost Stories kind of on someday I would like to probably own that. After playing this, it is just definitively better for me. First off, there's several things. First off, the artwork I like, but that's a subjective thing. But I just really, the production quality is just great. It just looks awesome on the board. The miniatures, the little posts that you hang your little, when you're changing the color on. It just really looks awesome. Love the production quality. Outside of the white wild on the die.
Yeah, that was Daniel's one complaint.
I was like, come on, they did great on everything, and yet the best die roll you can have is the
only one that doesn't have like a cool engraved
logo or something.
Symbol or something.
It's literally just like a white circle. Anyways, I'll pass on that. Moving the darkness back is, I think, way more interesting in this game because, in Ghost Stories, it was just you move the haunters back all on one side you just pick a side of the board. And we actually, because
we often house ruled that to move all of them back.
We did everything back because the game was just so hard. But now you have the choice of and do they call it darkness or whatever those little...
It's like grasp of evil or something.
Okay.
That is one of the funny things about this is like, we have to so retrain our brains. We're playing the whole time and I'm going to go over here to get a Tau.
Yeah,
I mean, equipment.
Yeah, I know. We've played Ghost Stories a lot.
Yeah.
But the decision when you go and is much more interesting because you can remove 2 from anywhere. So it could be off of a monster, it could be off of a tile, it could be off of a player. So there's a lot more interest in that. I find they've switched a few of the tiles, and I think the tiles now in Ghost Stories there were some tiles that we almost never used, whereas now you can think of situations with every tile where this could be really helpful. they made the crazy change that you can now move diagonal. That it's like, when I first heard that, I was like, I thought that was gonna like break the game, but it actually, I think, makes the game. I mean, it definitely eases how horribly brutal Ghost Stories was.
Yeah.
But I mean, we lost this game, so
That's true.
there you go. But I find that's just more fun. You can get around more and whatnot. Yeah. So overall, I just think this is the definitive version, and one that, I mean, this is a must buy for me. And we lost the game. It was on a tragic. We had to roll the is it called the cursed die? I don't know. I'm gonna call it
Maybe.
that.
I don't know. Probably not.
But we roll the our sister rolls the one side that causes the fourth tile to flip.
Yeah, I think it's just the third. But
oh,
yeah,
that's
that's the only way we were going to
That's
lose.
the other thing that improves with the game is you don't have to flip the tiles. You just place
it's
the
just
tiles. That's just better.
Yeah.
So anyways, just the game, I hadn't played Ghost Stories in so long. So to play this, it was like I got the Ghost Stories experience, and just everything was refined, improved. I loved it. Last thing is there's so many things here they improved. Now you can have in Ghost Stories, the player powers were double-sided, so you couldn't have the two sides like together. Well, now it's you can have any combination of player powers. Again, huge improvement.
Yep. So there's way more variety in the 4 that are in play at any given point, which was one of the biggest selling points for me, because I love that. Absolutely. Variability. I agree with everything you said. I don't think I really have much to add. I think it's one of the best examples of how to do like a second. It's not really even a second edition, but like a new edition of an old game really well. They kept the essence of what was good at it. They looked at some areas to make some key improvements. The production's really great. It's a shame that I don't think the game has sold very well. Because it's like, man, there's a lot of people that I think are sleeping on this that would probably love this game.
We are going to dedicate our channel to campaigning.
The weekly Last Bastion.
They're still talking about it?
Yeah.
It's going to be our number one play forever.
Yeah, it is the type of game. It's the type of cooperative game that is very open information. So if your group suffers from like kind of alpha gamer stuff or whatever, it's the type of game that's going to bring it out. And so for some people, it's not going to be the right pick. But man, have we had some memorable moments with Ghost Stories, and I see that continuing with Last Bastion.
Absolutely. Ryan.
It might have made my list had we not ended in such depressing fashion.
How we have never overlapped is just phenomenal. Yes. But
yeah, we actually just like check our list ahead of time. This is all just really good acting.
Yeah.
No, we go in blind. Which is why Daniel doesn't know that my number 1.
I have a guess.
You have a guess. Actually, you probably do know it. This is a game that probably has been on my radar as a potential game to own as long as any game. Like, it dates back to me first getting into the hobby back in 2009.
My guess is wrong. This is not
2009, 2010. But they're always, like, it was out of print a lot, and the editions, like, it was hard to come by. And it also is a game that isn't particularly flashy. So if I ever put it on like my list of games that, hey, these are lists of games you could get for my birthday,
never
like,
buy it for you.
Nobody buys it for me. It's but finally there was a big kind of Kickstarter reprint for a new edition, and it is a beautiful new edition. They did a great job on it, and that is Raw. Just RA, new candidate for shortest name in my collection. And I was so happy to finally get to try it, because, I would keep coming back and looking into it, and I'm like, man, this is just sounds like such a fascinating auction game that kind of combines push your luck and set collection and plays in a reasonable amount of time. It just felt so different from things I have in my collection. And having now played it several times, I totally am so happy with it. Like, it's awesome. Amazing it came out in 1999, like the original design, because it feels fresh. Honestly, it feels fresh in the landscape of modern games, because there's just not a lot like it. And this particular session, which is a 3-player game and is with 2 friends that I knew were probably going to like it a lot. Like, it just felt like if this group doesn't, have a really good session of it, But man, it was just an amazing session. For a little context on kind of how Raw works, each player has these numbered sun tiles. So in our game, there was basically 1 through 13 are in play. So we each had 4, and there's 1 that's in the middle. And on your turn, you're drawing tiles and adding it to this offer that's going to be going up for auction for somebody to get all those tiles as well as the sun tile that's there. And so eventually a player on their turn can invoke Ra to say, hey, I want the auction to start now. And the advantage to doing that is you get to bid last. And it's just a once around bid where everybody can optionally bid one of those sun tiles. And that's all open information, which is part of what makes it so interesting, because you always know who has the trump at any given, who has the current highest sun tile available. You also know, like, okay, I'm lower. There's often times where I'm like, I'm going to invoke Ra earlier with lower sets, to make it hard on these people with the good tiles to decide if they want to waste it on these smaller sets. Because ultimately, if you win the bid, you get all those tiles and get to put them by your player board, and those score at the end of each epoch and then score also at the end of the game. And so it's just this fascinating, like, as it goes around and it's filling up, and obviously which things come out totally shift the value of what's out there. But then that value is different for every player, because depending on what I have, you're trying to collect different monuments, or potentially the same. You can kind of either go for breadth or depth. But there may be a monument there that's like worthless for me, but it's the one that this other player needs. And so you can see that, like, it's all open. So it's like, okay, I know they're valuing this a lot more. Can I use that in my strategy of when I trigger a bid? The bids can also be triggered if someone draws a Ra tile from the bag. And so that you kind of have these impromptu auctions where if everybody passes, we just continue. But then those also push the end of the round. So the round can end if we all spend all our sun tiles and win a bunch of sets. But if the Ra tiles, it moves this little boat along, and if it gets to the end, then it just ends. And if you have sun tiles left, you're kind of out of luck as far as you didn't get anything. So such a fascinating game, and we just had an amazing game of it. I was in a position where I was scoring really well in each epoch. Like, I was up by quite a bit, but I maybe wasn't doing as well in the end game scoring, which is a lot of the monuments. Whereas it was the opposite for another player who I think literally in the first 2 epochs had netted a negative score. Because you can get negatives depending on some of the categories. But then he did amazing in the monuments as well as some of the other in-game scoring. And so it turned out that the final score, I had 46 and both of them had 44. And it was like,
my gosh.
I was at 46. One of them like totally came back in the end game scoring to get all the way to 44. And then the other player, one of the things you score at the end is whoever has the highest sum of the sun tiles that you have at the end is going to get like 5, and whoever has the least is a -5. So even though there isn't going to be another round to use those, it still matters like which sun tiles you get at the end of the game. And so the other player that got 44 was actually the least. So he was at 49 and came down to 44. And so it was just I couldn't have asked for a better example of like what that game can be. I think it's definitely one, anybody in modern board gaming like owes it to themselves to try it out, just because it is so different, but it's also super accessible. Like, the rules teach is not hard. Like, it's got such an amazing ratio of rules to depth, to the point where, people play this game competitively. Like, it was in the world champion, the new like world championship or world series of board gaming had a Ra category. So I'm sure, we would get just absolutely smoked by those.
Ryan.
But it's a great, that's a good quality in the game, is kind of this very accessible up front, but there's just a lot of room. So super great game of it. It also was a game of it that just made me like, you get that like purchase validation, right? Of like, after all these years of like thinking I want to acquire it. Yeah, I was right. All those times putting it on my list.
Take that.
And having you guys ignore it.
I go and just look at one picture of a game, and that tells me whether I'm going to get it for Ryan or not. And Ra didn't make it.
The new edition looks nice. I don't have the ultra premium one. I didn't pay for honestly, the main reason I didn't want to pay for it is like it makes the tiles these thick wood things. So the bag, even with the cardboard ones, it's this huge bag you're drawing tiles from. And with that, it's just like massive, and it makes the box like as big as Feast for Odin. So I was like, I think I'm okay with the standard.
Yeah. That is that. Yeah, I have not tried that one, because that's I mean, you got that pretty recently.
Pretty
right?
recent. Maybe soon. This next month we'll.
That's true. We'll have
see
another
each other.
opportunity.
Yeah.
That'd actually be, that'd be a great one to try. Well, there you have it. Those are our top 3 plays of June 2023. If you want to check out any of the games that we talked about in this video, we've got links down below. And hey, we've got a couple more recommendations from YouTube right for you, right next to me here. You can check those out, and we will see you in the next video.